Hi. Yeah, as Ellie said, my name is Alex, and Future Aleppo, if you're curious to see it, is out that way. It's a virtual reality experience based on the work of Mohammed Katesh. Just to give you a little bit of background from me, I'm from initially from the film industry. Then I became quite disillusioned, and I ended up working in what was called transmedia, which is a sort of platform agnostic approach to storytelling. So we didn't really work towards any specific platform. And that was my approach to this project initially before we sort of decided upon virtual reality. So just to tell you about Mohammed, Mohammed started building models as his city was being destroyed. He comes from Aleppo, which obviously has been devastated by the conflict in Syria. What he would do is he would salvage whatever materials he could find on the streets around where he lived, and then he would go up to his rooftop on his apartment and actually look out to see what had been destroyed that day, and then he would reconstruct the building using whatever materials he could find. His mother was an art teacher, and when her bomb was destroyed, her school was destroyed by bombing. She managed to sort of retrieve all the materials from the school, and so he managed to start using things like papercraft and various things, and he became a really fantastic builder. I mean, it was always his dream to become an architect, and for him, this was his outlet in dealing with the conflict, to take a really creative approach. So his story was first sort of publicized on Channel 4 News by a journalist called Waad Al-Khatib, who's recently won the Emmy Award for her work in Syria. And she and I have been working together for many years. And from there, I just kind of realized that there was a greater project here that would actually encourage children who'd sort of been robbed of whatever agency they experienced through the conflict to actually emulate Mohammed and reconstruct their city. So this is just, I find it fascinating just watching him build. It's sort of very meditative, and this is just to illustrate how simple it really is. Probably people will talk about budgets, but for me initially the budget was just paper. So that's really how we started. So you can see, the craftsmanship that gets involved in that. And then what we realized is that there were ways that we could actually encourage people to tell their stories through his city. So I think the fancy architectural term is polyphonic. So we look at the city as a collection of stories. And so what we did thereafter, and you can see it in the model outside, is we actually so we actually wired up the model with this product called bare conductive ink, and actually what we're doing in workshops as well is not just putting funny cat sounds, we're also putting stories in them as well. So we give a sense of like a physical space which actually imbues people with the personal histories of Aleppo. So whilst I was out there, as I say, I'm somewhat platform agnostic, and I didn't really want to subscribe to anything. And to be honest, I really don't like virtual reality. I think it's had some really bad press in terms of it being an empathy machine. I don't think it is personally. So I was reluctant to sort of get the headset out of my suitcase. But actually his sister, which is this head here, she's 4 years old. Her name is Lamar. And so she'd only ever experienced the war around her. And actually when I put the headset on her whole body changed. It was really fascinating to see just the difference in her physically. I mean, usually she's very tense. If a plane flies over, she will actually freeze. But when she had this headset on, she had a complete escape from the world. So it was clear that rather than it being an empathy machine to take Guardian readers into war zones, VR could actually take people who are suffering and actually give them a reprieve from that suffering. So if they live in refugee camps, they can actually escape that. So the next stage was actually to capture his models. So this is a house that he just built. This is a process, I don't know if anyone is familiar, but it's a process called photogrammetry, which is essentially, it's very cheap, very easy. You just need we used a software program called Agasoft PhotoScan. And all we really did was just take lots and lots of photos. And the software program actually stitches them together. You can use more sophisticated tools like LiDAR scanner, which I imagine in industry is more popularly used. But we found the sort of costs of LiDAR scanners, to rent them is about £500 a day. and then insurance, for taking them to a conflict zone is quite high, as you can imagine. So after that, we came back, and it was a case of just trying to keep the momentum going. I was initially very reticent to apply for funding because there just wasn't time. I had some money saved up, so I just burned through that. We had fundraising activities to support the family. And I just didn't feel like I had time to apply for these funds. So initially we just kept doing fundraisers. We kept encouraging kids to do workshops to emulate Muhammad. And then in the beginning of this year, we were very generously awarded a prize from Sheffield Dogfest of £10,000. And that was sponsored by FACT and the Arts Council England or UK. And so that allowed us to return back to Muhammad. The model that we built with him in a week is actually outside. And what we did thereafter was we actually produced the virtual reality experience based on that. So just to illustrate what can be done, what you'll see out there is £10,000. So it's quite a cheap form in many respects if virtual reality is where you want to go. Other assets cost a lot more if you want more animation, if you want sort of photorealistic people within it, that you're going to have to pay for that. But in terms of actually producing this, it was relatively inexpensive. So that's my boy, that's Muhammad. We played around with 360 cameras as well. But no, VR was the way, and we built it in an engine called Unity, which is also open source, so you can use that free as well. We decided ultimately not to use photogrammetry, so we employed a 3D modeler, and then we used the texture. So this is actually a 3D modeled object, and this is kind of how it looks when you actually go inside. This is with a mist effect, which we've taken out. Grant from the Arts Council, which will allow us to create an interactive version. In the meantime, we've been touring it. This was at YouTube headquarters, and we've managed to sort of support the family through like fees that we get from exhibiting it. Through that, we've set up a little school. That's Limar again. In Aleppo, one thing that is problematic in Turkey at the moment is that they've stopped teaching in Arabic, so a lot of children from Syria are sort of suffering in not getting the education they need. So because his parents were out of work, it just made sense for the local Syrian community to sort of come together and set up this little school. In the UK, we've been doing workshops as well with children. And what they do essentially is they emulate Muhammad. We build things, we use the Beck Conductive. And we also we capture them as well. And as of next year, we'll be going to refugee camps in Turkey and Jordan with Muhammad, and we'll actually be working with children there as well. So that they'll be able to, for every camp we go to, we'll be creating their own city in virtual reality, which they will also be able to escape to using mobile VR and hopefully web VR as well, if we can figure out how it works. So this is kind of where we're heading to. You'll see the on-rails version outside, but now that we've got this new grant, the idea was always to sort of create a more interactive version so it didn't feel quite so passive. So the idea is once the city has grown, you can actually go in and you will actually pick up pieces of paper and plant them. Some of the pieces of paper will turn into paper planes and you can throw them, and when they land, they will actually unfold like origami around you. And we have it in a variety of different languages. I don't know if it's going to go fast enough for me to take you actually inside the city. So this is a screen capture, so it's actually on someone's face, and they were taking their time. They were taking their time. But yeah, you can see the light effects, and yeah, it didn't really take very much to build this. But in terms of the sort of business strategy, it was always, I'm sort of said, it's whatever we recoup, which is not much, is redirected. It's very much not for profit. It's kind of very expensive. But yeah, no, it's luckily we've been chasing soft money, and it's been quite fruitful in that regard. We just got the Arts Council grant for the outreach refugee camps. We had a very generous donation by the OPEC Fund for International Development. So really, we've been chasing the soft money as much as anything. In terms of the IP, Future Aleppo, we've been speaking to publishers as well. We have spoken to larger corporations like the BBC, but ultimately, like we wanted to sort of retain a degree of autonomy, so we just kept the scale affordable for us, and that was our approach. I should probably round me up. Yeah, thank you.